The African sun beat down on the tarmac of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Agent Tony Spears, his face still bearing the scars of his ordeal in Zamunda, stepped off the plane. Duty called, and this time it was the Democratic Republic of Congo. Spears, a seasoned MI6 operative, was known for his cool head. He was ready for whatever lay ahead. The DRC was a powder keg, teetering on the brink of chaos. He had a mission to complete, and he wouldn't rest until it was done. The weight of responsibility settled on Spears' shoulders as he made his way through the bustling airport. He could feel the eyes of countless travellers on him, their curiosity piqued by his stern demeanour and the barely concealed tension in his stride. But their fleeting glances held no interest for him. His focus was laser-sharp, fixed on the task ahead. His destination was the MI6 Safehouse, a nondescript building nestled in a quiet suburb of Nairobi. There, amidst secure communication lines and maps plastered with intelligence reports, he would receive his briefing, the details of his mission laid bare. The DRC, a nation plagued by conflict and exploitation, awaited him. The heart of the matter was the illicit trade in conflict minerals, a deadly business fueling violence and instability in the region. Spears' mission was to infiltrate this shadowy network, to expose those profiting from the chaos and stem the flow of blood diamonds and other precious resources. He knew the risks involved, the dangers that lurked in the Congolese jungle and the bustling streets of Kinshasa. But fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. He was an instrument of justice, a guardian against the shadows, and he would face whatever darkness awaited him with unwavering resolve. The safe house was a hive of activity. Analysts hunched over computer screens, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of intelligence data. The air hummed with the low murmur of voices, punctuated by the staccato bursts of keyboard strokes and the occasional ringing phone. Spears moved through this world of shadows with a familiarity born of countless missions, his senses attuned to every detail. He was met by his handler, a woman known only as M, her face etched with the weariness of someone who had stared into the abyss for far too long. Her words were clipped, precise, conveying the gravity of the situation without a hint of emotion. "Agent Spears," she began, "this is Albert King. He'll be your partner on this mission." Spears turned to face the newcomer, a tall, imposing figure with the build of a professional athlete and an air of quiet competence. Albert King, an MI6 agent with a reputation for unwavering loyalty and a knack for blending into the most challenging environments, met Spears' gaze with a steady, reassuring presence. "Agent King," Spears acknowledged, extending his hand. "It's good to have you on board." "Likewise," King replied, his voice a deep baritone that hinted at a strength that ran far deeper than his physical prowess. "Let's get this done." The briefing room was Spartan, furnished only with a large table, several chairs, and a screen displaying a satellite image of Kinshasa, the sprawling capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The city, a chaotic mix of colonial-era architecture and modern high-rises, teemed with life, its streets a vibrant tapestry of humanity. M outlined the mission parameters, her words painting a grim picture of a nation ravaged by conflict, its vast natural resources plundered by corrupt officials and ruthless warlords. The illicit trade in conflict minerals, she explained, was the lifeblood of these criminal enterprises, funding their atrocities and perpetuating the cycle of violence. Spears and King listened intently, absorbing every detail, their faces betraying nothing of their thoughts. They were soldiers, trained to compartmentalize, to push aside any personal feelings and focus on the task at hand. Your primary objective, M continued, is to gather intelligence on the key players involved in this network. We need names, locations, routes, anything that can help us dismantle their operations and bring them to justice. And what about the Congolese authorities? Spears asked, his voice betraying a hint of skepticism. Can we count on their cooperation? M hesitated for a moment, a shadow of doubt crossing her face. The situation on the ground is complex, she replied cautiously. Corruption is endemic, and trust is a rare commodity. Proceed with caution, gentlemen. You're on your own. Section 5. The Heart of Darkness. The flight to Kinshasa was long and arduous, the constant drone of the aircraft engines a stark reminder of the distance they were travelling, both geographically and metaphorically. As the plane descended through the thick clouds, the sprawling cityscape emerged below, a vast concrete jungle stretching towards the horizon. Spears gazed out the window, his thoughts drifting back to the briefing, to M's words of caution. The DRC was not Zamunda, a nation steeped in tradition and ruled by a monarch with a semblance of control. This was a land where the rule of law had crumbled, where power flowed from the barrel of a gun and the promise of riches extracted from the earth. He felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, a mixture of anticipation and apprehension that always accompanied a new mission. The DRC was a dangerous place, a land where life was cheap and death was a constant companion. But he was no stranger to danger, and he would face whatever challenges lay ahead with the same unwavering determination he had displayed countless times before. Section 6. A Legacy of Conflict. The air hung heavy with humidity as they disembarked the plane. Kinshasa pulsated with frenetic energy, a cacophony of car horns, street vendors hawking their wares. As they made their way through the crowded airport terminal, the DRC's history was a tragic tapestry of colonialism and conflict. They hailed a taxi, its interior worn and dusty, and gave the driver the address of a safehouse. Spears felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The DRC was a land of immense beauty, but also of profound suffering. Spears and King were stepping into a maelstrom, their mission to bring order to this chaos. A day of celebration. The air crackled with excitement in the kingdom of Zamunda. The sun cast its golden rays upon the bustling capital city. King Jeffe was to take a new wife, Agent Josie Jackson. The palace courtyard was transformed into a breathtaking spectacle. A sea of faces, a kaleidoscope of colours and cultures. Dignitaries from across Africa united in anticipation. The scent of roasted meats and exotic spices filled the air. The rhythmic beat of drums and joyous laughter of children. Even the palace guards couldn't help but smile. Zamunda was the heart of Africa, a beacon of hope and joy. Section 2. The Bride and the King. Josie, now a queen in the making, stood before a gilded mirror, her reflection a mix of awe and apprehension. The traditional Zamundan wedding gown, a masterpiece of beadwork and silk, draped around her. Today, she stepped into a role demanding diplomacy, grace, and commitment to Zamunda. She missed Tony, her partner, and their unspoken understanding. but she focused on her duty as Queen Josie, a symbol of hope and progress. The door opened, and Zamundan women entered, ready to escort her to the ceremony. A union of cultures, a vibrant tapestry woven from the rich traditions of Zamunda and the understated elegance of the Western world. King Jeffe, resplendent in his royal robes, awaited his bride. The rhythmic chanting of the Zamundan priests echoed through the courtyard. Incense smoke swirled around, creating an ethereal atmosphere. All eyes turned to Josie as she made her entrance, a study in grace and poise. The setting sun cast a warm glow upon her. The ceremony was a blend of ancient rituals and modern vows. Josie and King Jeffe remained the focal point, their eyes locked in a silent conversation. Section 4. Whispers of Doubt. As the ceremony drew to a close, a hush fell over the assembled guests. The moment had arrived for King Jeffe to present Josie with the royal crown. But even as the king reached for the crown, a flicker of unease crossed his face, a fleeting shadow that did not go unnoticed by the keen eyes of the royal court. Whispers, hushed and conspiratorial, rippled through the crowd, their words carried on the gentle breeze, whispers that spoke of ancient traditions, of unspoken rules, of the delicate balance of power within the Zamundan monarchy. For King Jeffe, this union was more than just a marriage. It was a bold statement, a challenge to the old ways, a proclamation that Zamunda was ready to embrace the future, to forge alliances with the wider world. But there were those within the court, those who clung to the old ways, who viewed Josie with suspicion, her presence a threat to the established order. Their doubts, though unspoken, hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that threatened to mar the joyous occasion. The fate of Zamunda, it seemed, rested not just on the love between a king and his queen, but on their ability to navigate the treacherous waters of courtly intrigue and quell the whispers of discontent that threatened to undermine their reign. King Jeffe raised his goblet, firelight dancing in the ruby-red wine, and addressed his guests. Today we celebrate not just a union of two hearts, but a union of two worlds. My beloved Josie has honoured me by becoming my wife, my queen, and a symbol of Zamunda's commitment to progress and unity. The future of Zamunda lies in embracing the world, in building bridges of understanding and cooperation. As the festivities continued, a lone helicopter lifted off, carrying King Jeffe and Queen Josie to Madagascar. For Josie, it was a chance to leave behind espionage and embrace her new role. For King Jeffe, it was an opportunity to strengthen his bond with his new queen. They allowed themselves a brief respite, their love a beacon of hope. The Nairobi night was a living entity, a tapestry of streetlights and distant music. Tony found comfort in the anonymity of the city, but tonight felt different, charged with tension. He thought of Josie, now Queen Josie, her strength shining brighter than any crown. The safehouse, a nondescript building, offered little solace, its walls adorned with maps and intelligence reports. The briefing room was Spartan, tension hanging heavy in the silence. Albert King, an enigma, sat across from Tony, his face impassive. M stood before them, explaining their mission to infiltrate a network of warlords profiting from conflict minerals. Tony felt a surge of adrenaline, knowing some battles were worth fighting. As M delved into the Congolese conflict, Tony's mind raced, piecing together fragments of history. The DRC's history was a tragic tapestry woven from greed and violence. M spoke of wars, genocide, and the rise of armed groups vying for control. Their mission was to expose the truth and dismantle the networks profiting from suffering. M activated the projector, revealing General Joseph Cobra Kabila, a notorious warlord. Kabila controlled a vast territory, his militia responsible for countless atrocities. Their primary target was to gather evidence of Kabila's involvement in the conflict mineral trade. The room fell silent, the weight of their task settling upon them. The safehouse hummed with nervous energy as Tony and Albert prepared for their mission. Tony was drawn to the sounds of the city, the rhythmic cadence of Swahili. He thought of Josie, her laughter a beacon of light. He checked his equipment one last time, ready for the unknown. The flight to Kinshasa was long, the cityscape emerging below as they descended. The airport was a hive of activity, a mix of hope and despair. Tony felt they were stepping into the heart of darkness, where the line between right and wrong was blurred. Their mission had begun. The DRC, blessed with resources and cursed by exploitation, carries a heavy past. King Leopold II of Belgium seized control in 1885, unleashing a reign of terror. Millions perished under his rule, a genocide of staggering proportions. The Congo River ran red with the blood of the innocent. In 1960, the Congo broke free from Belgian colonialism, a moment of hope and trepidation. Independence proved a double-edged sword, the nation ill-prepared for self-governance. Patrice Lumumba became the first prime minister, envisioning a Congo free from foreign interference. His vision was short-lived, caught in a web of intrigue and Cold War tensions. Joseph Désiré Mobutu emerged, synonymous with corruption and brutality. With US backing, Mobutu seized control in 1965, plunging the nation into authoritarian rule. He silenced dissent, crushed opposition, and established a cult of personality. Under Mobutu's regime, the Congo's wealth was siphoned off, leaving the people in poverty. The year 1996 marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Congo's troubled history. A chapter that would see the nation engulfed in a series of conflicts that would become known as the First and Second Congo Wars. These wars, fueled by a toxic mix of ethnic tensions, regional rivalries, and the insatiable hunger for the Congo's mineral wealth, would draw in neighbouring countries, unleash unimaginable suffering upon the Congolese people, and leave the nation teetering on the brink of collapse. The First Congo War, sparked by the Rwandan genocide and the subsequent influx of Hutu refugees into eastern Zaire, saw Mobutu's grip on power weaken as rebel groups, backed by Rwanda and Uganda, advanced across the country. The war culminated in Mobutu's ouster in 1997 and the rise to power of Laurent Désiré Kabila, a former rebel leader who promised change but quickly proved to be cut from the same cloth as his predecessor. The Second Congo War, which erupted in 1998, was even more devastating, drawing in 9 African nations and claiming the lives of an estimated 5.4 million people, making it the deadliest conflict since World War II. The war, fueled by a complex web of alliances and betrayals, saw the Congo transformed into a battleground for competing factions, each vying for control of the country's mineral wealth. At the heart of the Congo's enduring conflict lies a tragic paradox. The very resources that should be a blessing for the Congolese people have become a curse, fueling violence, corruption, and unimaginable suffering. The Congo is rich in minerals essential for the global electronics industry: tantalum, tin, tungsten, and gold, known collectively as conflict minerals. But their extraction and trade have come at a devastating human cost. Armed groups, both Congolese and foreign, control vast swaths of territory in eastern Congo, where they force civilians to mine for conflict minerals under threat of violence. These minerals are then smuggled across borders, laundered through a complex network of middlemen and corporations, and ultimately end up in our smartphones, laptops, and other electronic devices. The profits from the conflict minerals trade line the pockets of warlords, corrupt officials, and multinational corporations, while the Congolese people continue to endure unimaginable suffering. Villages are terrorized, women are subjected to sexual violence, and children are forced to become soldiers or miners, their childhoods stolen, their futures shattered. Despite the seemingly intractable nature of the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, there have been glimmers of hope in recent years. The international community, recognizing the devastating human toll of the conflict and the need to address the root causes of violence, has stepped up its efforts to promote peace, stability, and development in the region. The United Nations peacekeeping mission in the DRC, MONUSCO, has played a crucial role in protecting civilians, supporting humanitarian aid efforts, and working to disarm and demobilize armed groups. Regional organizations, such as the African Union and the International Conference on the Great Lakes region, have also been actively involved in mediating peace talks and promoting regional cooperation. While significant challenges remain, the Congolese people themselves have shown incredible resilience and a determination to build a better future for themselves and their children. Civil society organizations, often operating in dangerous and difficult conditions, continue to advocate for peace, human rights, and good governance. Kinshasa was a city that assaulted the senses, a chaotic symphony of sights, sounds, and smells that overwhelmed Tony's senses. The air hung heavy with humidity, thick with the smell of diesel fumes, charcoal fires, and the sweet, cloying aroma of frangipani blossoms. The red soil, baked hard by the equatorial sun, stained everything it touched, a constant reminder of the earth's raw power and the riches it concealed. The streets teemed with life, a chaotic mix of hawkers peddling their wares, dilapidated taxis vying for space, and pedestrians navigating the throng with a practiced ease that spoke of years spent navigating the urban labyrinth. Music, loud and rhythmic, pulsed from makeshift bars and street-side stalls, a vibrant soundtrack to the city's frenetic energy. Tony, his senses on high alert, moved through the crowds with a practiced ease, his hand never straying far from the concealed pistol beneath his jacket. He had donned the guise of a jaded aid worker, his clothes worn and dusty, his demeanour weary, a mask that concealed the sharp intelligence and steely resolve that burned beneath the surface. Albert, a master of blending in, had adopted the persona of a local businessman, his Swahili fluent and effortless, his manner confident, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings for any sign of threat or opportunity. They were hunters in a concrete jungle, their prey the shadowy figures who profited from the Congo's misery. Their search for information led them to the heart of the city's sprawling market, a labyrinth of narrow alleys and makeshift stalls overflowing with everything. The air buzzed with frenetic energy, a cacophony of bartering and gossip. Tony watched as Albert engaged in a hushed conversation. The old man, his eyes sharp, spoke in rapid-fire Swahili, his words punctuated by the click of worry beads. Albert responded respectfully, his body language calculated. The old man was rumoured to have connections to the city's underworld. Albert returned, signalling a breakthrough. "The old man has heard whispers," Albert said, his voice low. "A shipment of coltan is expected to arrive in Kinshasa." "Coltan," Tony repeated, the word heavy with significance. The information gleaned from the old man, though vague, sent a shiver down Tony's spine. The prospect of a major coltan shipment arriving in Kinshasa suggested the involvement of someone with significant power and reach. Someone who could operate with impunity in a city riddled with corruption. The name that echoed in Tony's mind was General Joseph Cobra Kabila, the notorious warlord who controlled a vast swathe of territory in eastern Congo. Kabila, M had explained, was a key player in the conflict mineral trade, his militia responsible for countless atrocities committed against civilians. Could Kabila be behind the coltan shipment? The thought sent a chill through Tony. If Kabila was involved, it would raise the stakes exponentially. Confronting a man like Kabila, a man who ruled through fear and violence, would be like poking a hornet's nest. "We need more information," Tony said, his voice betraying a hint of the tension that coiled within him. "We need to find out who's behind this shipment, where it's coming from, and where it's going." Albert nodded, his face grim. "The old man mentioned a name," he said. "A fixer. Someone who arranges these kinds of deals. He goes by the name of Michel." The search for Michel led them deeper into the city's underbelly, a world of dimly lit bars, crowded nightclubs, and back-alley gambling dens where fortunes were won and lost on the turn of a card or the roll of a dice. It was a world where information was currency, where loyalties shifted like the desert sands, and where survival depended on knowing who to trust and who to avoid. Through a combination of careful observation, strategic bribes, and the occasional veiled threat, they managed to track Michel to a seedy bar on the outskirts of the city. The bar, its windows blacked out, its air thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of stale beer, was frequented by a motley crew of mercenaries, smugglers, and shady businessmen. Michel, a portly man with slicked-back hair and a nervous energy that betrayed his outward confidence, seemed unsurprised by their arrival. He listened intently as Albert, his Swahili laced with a subtle menace, outlined their proposition. They needed information, Albert explained. Information about the coltan shipment. Michel, his eyes flicking between them, weighed his options. He knew who they were, or at least who they claimed to be. Crossing them would be unwise, but so too would betraying his clients. "I can get you the information you need," Michel finally said, his voice barely audible above the din of the bar. "But it will cost you." The price, as it turned out, was steep. Michel, a master of exploiting desperation, demanded a small fortune in exchange for the information they sought. Tony, his stomach churning at the thought of funding a criminal enterprise, reluctantly agreed. They were running out of time, and the information Michel possessed could potentially save countless lives. Michel, true to his word, provided them with a name, a location, and a timetable. The coltan shipment, he explained, was due to arrive in Kinshasa within the next 24 hours. It would be transported under heavy guard to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, where it would be loaded onto a cargo plane bound for Dubai. The name that sent a chill down Tony's spine was General Cobra Kabila. Kabila, it seemed, was indeed behind the coltan shipment. He had used his connections within the Congolese government to secure the necessary permits and had bribed officials to turn a blind eye to his activities. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, revealing a sinister picture of greed, corruption, and unimaginable suffering. Kabila, it seemed, had no qualms about profiting from the misery of his own people, his hands stained with the blood of innocents. Armed with the information Michel had provided, Tony and Albert formulated a plan. They would intercept the coltan shipment before it could be loaded onto the cargo plane. They would expose Kabila's involvement in the conflict mineral trade and bring him to justice. But their mission was fraught with danger. Kabila's men were well armed and ruthless, their loyalty bought and paid for with blood money. Confronting them head-on would be suicidal. They would need to be smart, stealthy, and above all, lucky. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the city, Tony and Albert set out for the warehouse on the outskirts of Kinshasa. They had a long night ahead of them, a night that would test their skills, their resolve, and their very humanity. The trail of stolen minerals, a trail paved with blood and suffering, led back to the heart of darkness, to the war-torn jungles of eastern Congo, where General Cobra Kabila ruled with an iron fist. Tony and Albert, their resolve hardening with each passing mile, were determined to follow that trail to its end, no matter the cost. The successful interception of the coltan shipment sent shockwaves through the intricate network of the conflict mineral trade, its reverberations reaching far beyond the bustling streets of Kinshasa. The news, whispered at first in hushed tones, spread like wildfire through the city's underbelly and across the vast expanse of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The operation, a testament to Tony and Albert's meticulous planning and daring execution, had struck a blow to General Cobra Kabila's illicit empire, exposing his deep-rooted corruption and his callous disregard for the suffering of his people. The seizure of the coltan, a tangible symbol of Kabila's greed, sent a clear message. The days of operating with impunity were over. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. In the shadowy world of mineral traders, fixers, and corrupt officials, a sense of unease settled in a realization that the game had changed. The old rules no longer applied, and those who had grown accustomed to operating in the shadows were forced to reevaluate their positions, their allegiances, and their own vulnerability. The Congolese people, long accustomed to the indifference of the outside world and the oppressive weight of their own government, received the news with a mixture of disbelief and cautious optimism. Could this be a turning point, a sign that the tide was finally turning against the forces that had held their nation hostage for so long. The whispers of change, carried on the wind, reached the most remote corners of the DRC, igniting a flicker of hope in the hearts of those who had long endured the brunt of the conflict. In villages ravaged by violence, where the sound of gunfire had become a grim soundtrack to daily life, people dared to dream of a future free from fear. The successful interception of the coltan shipment, a rare victory against the seemingly insurmountable forces of greed and corruption, served as a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope could endure. It was a testament to the courage of individuals like Tony and Albert, who were willing to risk their lives to expose the truth and fight for justice. But the hope, though palpable, was fragile, tempered by the harsh realities of a conflict that had claimed millions of lives and shattered countless dreams. The DRC's history was replete with false dawns, with moments of promise that had quickly given way to renewed cycles of violence and despair. The international community, often criticized for its slow response to the crisis in the DRC, now had a responsibility to seize the opportunity presented by Tony and Albert's actions. The world could no longer turn a blind eye to the suffering of the Congolese people or the illicit networks that profited from their misery. The exposure of General Cobra Kabila's involvement in the conflict mineral trade sent ripples through the corridors of power in capitals across the globe. Governments that had long turned a blind eye to Kabila's atrocities, their own economic interests intertwined with the DRC's vast mineral wealth, were now facing mounting pressure to act. Human rights organizations, emboldened by the success of Tony and Albert's mission, intensified their campaigns, demanding sanctions against Kabila and his network of collaborators. Consumer groups called for boycotts of companies that sourced conflict minerals from the DRC, their voices amplified by a growing chorus of outrage on social media. The United Nations, its peacekeeping mission in the DRC, often criticized for its ineffectiveness, faced renewed scrutiny. The Security Council convened an emergency meeting to discuss the situation, with member states debating the need for a more robust mandate for MONUSCO, including the possibility of targeted sanctions against those responsible for human rights abuses. The international community, often divided by political considerations and competing economic interests, found itself at a crossroads. The time for empty rhetoric was over. The world was watching, and the stakes were too high to ignore. The pressure, both internal and external, began to take its toll on General Cobra Kabila's regime. The seizure of the coltan shipment, a significant financial blow, had exposed weaknesses in his network, sowing seeds of doubt among his allies and emboldening his enemies. Rumors of dissent within Kabila's inner circle spread like wildfire, fueled by whispers of betrayal and a growing fear of retribution. Those who had once benefited from their association with the general now distanced themselves, their loyalty a fickle thing in the face of shifting power dynamics. The Congolese army, long riddled with corruption and factionalism, showed signs of fracturing. Soldiers, their morale low, their pay often delayed, began to question their allegiance to a leader who seemed more interested in enriching himself than in protecting his people. Kabila, sensing the ground shifting beneath his feet, retreated further into his inner sanctum, surrounded by a dwindling cadre of loyalists. He lashed out at his perceived enemies, both real and imagined, his paranoia deepening with each passing day. Section 5. The Long Road to Justice. The road to justice in the Democratic Republic of Congo was a long and arduous one, paved with the wreckage of countless broken promises and the enduring legacy of impunity. The successful interception of the coltan shipment, though a significant victory, was just one battle in a long and complex war. The international community, its resolve tested by years of inaction, had a responsibility to ensure that those responsible for crimes against humanity were held accountable. The International Criminal Court, established to prosecute individuals accused of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, had a crucial role to play in ending the cycle of impunity in the DRC. But justice, in its truest sense, required more than just punishment. It demanded a commitment to addressing the root causes of the conflict, the poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity that had fueled violence for generations. It required investment in education, healthcare, and infrastructure, the building blocks of a just and equitable society. It required support for civil society organizations, the unsung heroes working tirelessly to promote peace, reconciliation, and human rights. Section 6. A Legacy Defined. The legacy of Tony and Albert's mission to the Democratic Republic of Congo would be debated and analysed for years to come. Some would argue that their actions, though daring and well-intentioned, had a negligible impact on the overall course of the conflict. Others would hail them as heroes, their courage and determination a beacon of light in a region shrouded in darkness. But beyond the headlines and the political posturing, the true measure of their success lay in the lives they had touched, the hope they had ignited, and the ripple effects of their actions that continued to reverberate through the Congo long after they had departed. Their mission had exposed the dark underbelly of the global economy, the intricate web of greed and corruption that fueled conflict and sustained suffering. It had highlighted the human cost of our insatiable appetite for electronic devices, the coltan in our smartphones stained with the blood of innocence. And perhaps, most importantly, it had reminded the world that even in the face of unimaginable brutality, the human spirit, in its indomitable quest for freedom, justice, and a better tomorrow, could not be extinguished. The plane carrying Tony and Albert soared through the night sky, leaving behind the tumultuous heart of Africa. Below them, the vast expanse of the DRC stretched towards the horizon, its darkness concealing a multitude of scars. As they journeyed back towards England, a profound silence settled over the cabin, a stark contrast to the cacophony of Kinshasa's streets. Tony, his gaze fixed on the star-dusted night sky, couldn't shake the feeling that their work in the DRC was far from over. The successful interception of the coltan shipment and the exposure of General Kabila's corrupt regime were significant victories, but merely first steps. The DRC, wounded but not broken, faced a monumental task of rebuilding. Amidst the darkness, Tony clung to hope, witnessing the resilience of the Congolese people. The road to recovery would be long, but the journey had begun. Albert, his usual stoicism softened by a rare moment of reflection, broke the silence. Sometimes, he mused, it feels like we're fighting a losing battle. The greed, the corruption, it's like a cancer that eats away at everything good. Tony nodded, understanding the sentiment all too well. But then, he countered, you meet people who refuse to give up hope. The seeds of hope, sown in the fertile ground of the Congolese people's resilience, were beginning to sprout. As the plane continued its eastward journey, Tony found himself reflecting on his own role in the grand tapestry of global events. He was, by profession, a man of secrets, his life defined by shadows and clandestine operations. Yet, his experiences in the DRC had left an indelible mark, a profound sense of responsibility for the fate of a nation teetering on the brink. He had witnessed the devastating consequences of indifference, the human cost of turning a blind eye to suffering. He had seen the faces of those whose lives had been shattered by conflict, their stories etched into the very fabric of their beings. He knew that he could not simply return to his old life, to the comfortable routines of his profession, and pretend that what he had seen and experienced in the DRC had never happened. He had a story to tell, a story that needed to be heard, a story of greed and corruption, of unimaginable cruelty and extraordinary resilience. A story that challenged the conscience of the world, that demanded a reckoning with the hidden costs of our interconnected lives. As the first rays of dawn illuminated the eastern horizon, casting a warm glow across the cabin, Tony felt a renewed sense of purpose. The DRC, he knew, would forever hold a piece of his heart, a reminder of the fragility of peace and the enduring power of hope. The mission, in a sense, would never truly be over. The fight for justice, for equality, for a world where the wealth of nations benefited all its citizens was a perpetual struggle, one that demanded unwavering commitment and a belief in the possibility of change. As he disembarked from the plane, stepping back onto British soil, Tony carried with him the weight of his experiences, the memories of those he had met, those he had fought alongside, and those he had lost. He carried with him, too, the seeds of hope, the belief that even in the darkest of corners of the world, a new dawn could break, heralding a future where peace, justice, and human dignity prevailed. The journey, he knew, was far from over, but he was ready to face the challenges ahead, armed with the knowledge that even the smallest of actions, when driven by compassion and a belief in a better tomorrow, could make a world of difference.